What if I told you that the patient lying motionless in bed 347, the one everyone thought was brain dead, has been watching us this entire time, fully aware, fully conscious, choosing to stay silent while a murder goes unpunished? My name is Dr. Lucas Mendes, and I've been working as a psychiatrist at Sao Paulo's Institute of Neurological Recovery for 8 years. I've seen patients who couldn't speak, patients who couldn't move, patients trapped inside bodies that betrayed them. But I had never seen anything like patient 347 until 3 months ago. This is the story of how I discovered that my catatonic patient wasn't sick at all. He was hiding. And what he was hiding from would change everything I thought I knew about the human mind, about justice, and about how far someone will go to expose the truth. It started on a Tuesday morning in September. I was reviewing new patient files when I noticed something strange about the admission paperwork for bed 347. The patient's name was Gabriel Moretti, 42 years old, found unresponsive in his apartment by neighbors who reported a bad smell coming from his unit. No signs of violence, no drugs in his system, no underlying medical conditions that would explain his state. The emergency team brought him in, and the neurologists ran every test imaginable: MRI, CT scans, EEG monitoring, blood work, spinal taps. Everything came back normal. His brain activity was consistent with someone in a waking state, yet he showed no response to external stimuli. No eye movement, no muscle reflexes, nothing. They labeled it as catatonic stupor of unknown origin and transferred him to my department. I remember walking into his room that first day. Gabriel lay perfectly still, eyes open but unfocused, staring at the ceiling. His breathing was regular, his vitals were stable, but there was something about him that felt different from other catatonic patients I'd treated. I couldn't explain it then, but looking at him felt like looking at someone who was waiting for something. I introduced myself, explained that I would be his attending psychiatrist, and told him about the treatment plan we would try. Standard procedure. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. Over the next 2 weeks, I visited Gabriel every day. I tried different approaches, different medications, different stimuli, music therapy, tactile stimulation, even brought in his sister, Marina, who sat by his bedside crying and begging him to wake up. Nothing worked. But then I started noticing small things, tiny details that most people would miss. On day 16, I was reading aloud from a newspaper, something I did to provide auditory stimulation. I was reading about a local corruption scandal involving a city councilman when I saw it. Just for a fraction of a second, Gabriel's left index finger twitched. I stopped, waited, nothing. I went back to the article, reading the same paragraph again. This time, I watched his hands carefully. When I mentioned the councilman's name, Paulo Andrade, Gabriel's finger moved again, just barely, but it moved. My heart started racing. I put down the newspaper and leaned closer. "Gabriel, if you can hear me, move your finger again." Nothing. I tried a different approach. "Gabriel, I'm going to say some names. If you recognize one, move your finger, any finger." I listed random names from the newspaper, politicians, athletes, celebrities, no response. Then I said, "Paulo Andrade." His left index finger lifted slightly off the bed. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't random, this was intentional. I spent the rest of that day researching Paulo Andrade, city councilman, District 7, known for his work on urban development projects. Clean record, family man, nothing that would explain why a catatonic patient would react to his name. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Gabriel's finger, about the way it moved only when I said that specific name. What was the connection? The next morning, I brought my laptop to Gabriel's room. I pulled up news articles about Paulo Andrade and started reading them aloud, watching Gabriel carefully. Most articles got no response. Updates about city projects, quotes about budget allocations, photos from charity events. Gabriel remained still. Then I found an older article from 14 months ago, a brief mention of a traffic accident in District 7, a hit and run. The victim was a 23-year-old architecture student named Isabella Fonseca. She died at the scene. The driver was never found. When I read Isabella's name, Gabriel's entire hand clenched into a fist. I stopped breathing. "You knew her," I whispered. "You knew Isabella." I searched for more information about Isabella Fonseca. Graduated top of her class, worked part-time at an architecture firm, volunteered at a community center teaching design to underprivileged kids. By all accounts, she was exactly the kind of person the world needed more of, and someone had killed her and gotten away with it. I found her social media profiles, scrolled through photos of her life, smiling with friends, working on building models, attending protests for better urban planning. And then I found a photo that made everything click into place. It was taken at an architecture conference 2 years ago. Isabella stood next to an older man, both holding awards. The caption read, "So grateful to my mentor, Gabriel Moretti, for believing in my work." Gabriel wasn't just any patient. He was Isabella's mentor, her teacher, probably one of the most important people in her life. I looked at Gabriel lying in that bed, and suddenly his catatonia made a different kind of sense. This wasn't a medical condition. This was a choice. But why? Why would someone choose to lock themselves away from the world? I needed to know more. I called Marina, Gabriel's sister, and asked her to come in. When she arrived, I asked her about Isabella. Her face went pale. "How do you know about Isabella?" she asked. "Tell me about her relationship with Gabriel." Marina sat down heavily. Isabella was like a daughter to him. Gabriel never married, never had kids. He poured everything into his students, but Isabella was special. She had this vision for architecture that focused on community, on making cities work for people, not profit. Gabriel saw himself in her. What happened after she died? Marina's eyes filled with tears. He fell apart. Gabriel became obsessed with the accident. He didn't believe it was random. He spent months investigating, talking to witnesses, reviewing traffic camera footage. He was convinced it was Paolo Andrade. The councilman? Yes, Gabriel found evidence that Andrade was driving in that area at the time of the accident. His car had damage consistent with hitting a pedestrian, but Andrade had the car repaired immediately and claimed he hit a pole. Gabriel went to the police, but they said there wasn't enough evidence. Andrade's lawyers threatened Gabriel with defamation. The case went nowhere. And then Gabriel disappeared into himself. He stopped eating regularly, stopped seeing friends, stopped working. I tried to help him, but he pushed me away. He said he was fine, that he just needed time. 3 weeks later, I found him like this. I felt sick. The pieces were coming together, but they formed a picture I didn't want to see. Marina, did Gabriel ever talk about giving up? About not wanting to live? She shook her head firmly. No, Gabriel wasn't suicidal. He was angry. He kept saying that someone needed to pay attention, that someone needed to see what he saw. He said the system was broken and no one cared about justice anymore. After Marina left, I sat with Gabriel for a long time. I thought about what it meant, what he was doing. If my theory was correct, Gabriel hadn't retreated from reality because he couldn't handle it. He'd retreated from reality to make a statement about it. I had to test this theory. The next day, I did something that could have cost me my medical license. I waited until the evening shift when the halls were quieter, and I brought a video camera into Gabriel's room. I set it up on a tripod and pressed record. "Gabriel, I know you can hear me. I know you're in there, fully conscious, choosing not to respond. I need you to understand something. I believe you. I believe Paolo Andrade killed Isabella. I believe the system failed her and failed you. But this, what you're doing, it won't change anything. You're destroying yourself, and Isabella's death will still go unpunished." No response. I continued, "Unless you help me, unless you give me something I can use to reopen the investigation. Gabriel, I need you to show me you're in there. I need you to prove it." I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. Nothing. I was about to give up when I heard it. A sound so soft I almost missed it. A whisper. Closer. I nearly knocked over the camera, rushing to his bedside. "Gabriel?" His eyes moved. For the first time since his admission, his eyes moved, focusing directly on me. "Closer," he whispered again. I leaned in until my ear was inches from his mouth. What he told me over the next 10 minutes changed everything. Gabriel explained that he had witnessed the hit and run. He was driving behind Andrade's car when it happened. He saw Andrade hit Isabella, saw him stop for just a moment, saw him look at her body in the street, and then saw him drive away. Gabriel followed him, watched him go to a private garage, watched him survey the damage, watched him make phone calls. Gabriel recorded everything on his phone. But then Andrade's security team noticed Gabriel. They chased him. Gabriel barely escaped, but in the panic, he dropped his phone. The evidence was gone.
Without the video, without physical evidence, Gabriel knew he had no case. Andrade was too powerful, too connected. Gabriel's word against a city councilman would go nowhere. He'd already tried the official channels, and they'd failed. So Gabriel chose a different path. He decided to become evidence himself. If a healthy man suddenly becomes catatonic with no medical explanation, if that man happens to be connected to an unsolved hit-and-run involving a powerful politician, eventually someone curious enough will ask the right questions, Gabriel whispered. "You're asking those questions, Dr. Mendes. But why this way? Why risk your life?" "Because dead witnesses get forgotten, but a living mystery, that stays in people's minds. Someone at the hospital will talk. A nurse, a resident, someone will mention the strange case of the catatonic architect who was connected to the Isabella Fonseca case. Word will spread. Andrade will hear about it. And he'll make a mistake. What if he doesn't? What if you're wrong? Then I've still made my choice. I won't participate in a world that lets powerful men murder innocent people without consequence. This is my protest, my silent witness." I pulled back and looked at him. His eyes were clear, sharp, absolutely lucid. "Gabriel, I can't let you do this. This isn't sustainable. Your body will deteriorate. You'll develop complications, infections, muscle atrophy." "I know. You're choosing to die. I'm choosing not to live in a world that doesn't care about justice. There's a difference." I didn't know what to say. As a doctor, my job was to heal, to preserve life. But as a person, I understood his anger, his grief, his need for someone to pay attention. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Document everything. Share my story. Make sure people know what Paulo Andrade did. Make sure Isabella isn't forgotten. That's all I want." That conversation happened 6 weeks ago. Since then, I've been walking a tightrope between my medical ethics and my personal conviction that Gabriel is right. I've documented his case carefully, noting every inconsistency, every moment of lucidity, every piece of evidence that suggests his catatonia is voluntary. I've reached out to journalists, to lawyers, to anyone who might be willing to look deeper into Isabella's death. 3 days ago, something happened. A reporter from a major newspaper contacted me. She'd heard rumors about Gabriel's case and wanted to investigate. I gave her everything I had. Yesterday, her article was published. "The Man Who Chose Silence. Catatonic Patient's Connection to Unsolved Hit and Run Raises Questions About Councilman Paulo Andrade." The story is spreading. People are paying attention. Andrade's office has issued statements denying any involvement. But the questions are being asked now. The case is being reopened. Gabriel remains in bed 347, silent and still. But yesterday morning, when I told him about the article, when I told him that Isabella's name was being spoken again, when people were demanding answers, I saw something I hadn't seen before. A single tear rolled down his cheek. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know if Gabriel will ever choose to wake up, if justice will ever truly be served, if Isabella will ever get the closure she deserves. What I do know is that Gabriel Moretti taught me something important. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Sometimes the most powerful protest is simply refusing to participate. And sometimes the only way to make people see the truth is to become impossible to ignore. Patient 347 remains catatonic, but he's not unresponsive. He's waiting. We're all waiting now, waiting to see if a man's sacrifice, a living testimony to injustice, will be enough to change something in a broken system. I visit him every day. I tell him about the investigation's progress. I read him articles about the public pressure mounting on Andrade. I update him on the protests organizing in Isabella's name. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see his finger move, a small acknowledgement that he's still there, still fighting in his own way, still refusing to let the world forget. They call him the patient who never woke up. But the truth is, Gabriel Moretti has never been more awake. While the rest of us sleepwalk through injustice, accepting corruption and violence as inevitable parts of life, Gabriel chose to stop, to force us to look, to make us uncomfortable with our complicity. Whether his method is right or wrong, whether his sacrifice will matter in the end, I can't say. But I know this: I will never forget patient 347. I will never forget Gabriel Moretti. And I will never forget Isabella Fonseca. Because that's what Gabriel wanted all along. For someone to remember. For someone to care. For someone to refuse to let this story end quietly. His silence has become the loudest voice in the room. Subscribe if you want to hear how this story ends.